Now we are going to jump straight into our next guest, Rocco. You can come on to the screen now, and I'm not even going to butcher your surname. I'm so sorry. Is it Loiacono?
Yeah, that's a good effort. That's pretty good.
Sorry, I'm a bogan from Queensland. I don't know what I'm talking about. Now, I will introduce you with a bit of a bio. So Rocco is a senior lecturer at Curtin University Law School, where he teaches in the areas of property law and legal research and writing. After graduating with a combined law and languages degree, he practiced as a lawyer for 10 years, most of that time at Clayton, one of Australia's largest law firms. And Rocco received the award of his PhD from the University of Western Australia in 2014, which focused on the translation difficulties arising from the differences that exist between continental legal systems and the English common law. Rocco has always had an interest in politics, fundamental freedoms, and the rule of law, and contributes regularly on these matters on Sky News, in the Spectator Australia, Quadrant Online, the Epoch Times, and the Australian, as well as authoring a chapter in Fundamental Rights in the Age of COVID-19, a Connor Court book. And obviously we are big fans of Connor Court around here. But Rocco, you are here tonight to talk about your brand new book that you are co-authoring with Augusto Zimmerman, another fellow WA member that Kate, I know, is very familiar with as well.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Yes, I've just put out a book with Augusto called Deconstructing ScoMo, Critical Reflections, there it is, yes, on Australia's 30th Prime Minister. And why? Just see love the cover, yes.
And as Selby said, it's nice to put a face to the name, because I think we've all read a lot of your articles in the Specky, that's for sure. So it is great. Thanks.
Look, why do we write this book? Well, for several reasons. One, John Ruddick, I know when we spoke previously, one of the things you wanted was someone to put out a book on Scott Morrison, and you were hoping a really good book on Scott Morrison would come out. Well, hopefully this foots the bill, because as we know, we have a Prime Minister who's a windsock, and it just depends what way the wind blows and what things he's saying. Doesn't matter what day it is. I mean, last year he was calling people in West Australia cavemen, and today he was here talking to a business event saying that WA was in a unique situation and he supports Mark McGowan. So there's just no consistency and no principle. So what we really wanted to do was actually nail him down on the things he has said in the past. And this book doesn't just cover COVID, it covers his prime ministership. So these are articles that Augusto and I have published in the Specky and Quadrant and a few other online publications on various issues that surround liberty and individual freedom and fundamental rights, and how he has just been so deficient in all those areas. I mean, let's not forget, this is the guy that said free speech doesn't create a single job, which is the biggest load of idiocy I've ever heard a Prime Minister say. And James Allen from University of Queensland, who kindly wrote the foreword for us, said, look, I don't know how you're going to do it, because you're trying to deconstruct someone who's so hollow. But the whole point is that we just want to put on the record exactly how hollow, how bad he is. And it's also we're hoping to get people in reading this book to think. We want people to think about really where you're going to place your vote this time around. The major parties obviously you cannot be trusted any longer. And I say this as someone who had voted Liberal all his life up until 2014. And what I've seen since then has obviously disgusted me. People, there still seems to be this idea, and I was listening to Talkback Radio this morning, there still seems to be this idea around that people should stop complaining, Australia's a great country, and look, at the end of the day, what we have to do everything we possibly can at all costs to keep Albanese out. So you have to vote Liberal anyway. Well, I just don't think that view is any longer tenable. Augusto certainly doesn't think this view is any longer tenable. And when you hopefully read this book, you'll see why the Liberals are just as bad, if not worse, than the Labor Party. And you should not direct your vote to either of them.
Well, I know that Augusto has been very pointed at his criticisms of Scott Morrison, which has been fabulous to watch, I must say. Now, Rocco, there is a question here from Anthony saying, can you outline what Australians' implied right of free speech is?
Okay. The implied right to free speech is actually still up for debate, pretty much in the High Court at the moment. Obviously, considering the recent decision that came down concerning Liberal Democrats last week, people are seriously questioning whether there is an implied right to free speech in the Constitution. It derives from the wording in the section of the Constitution which talks about the House of Representatives and members of the House of Representatives and senators being directly chosen by the people. And therefore, if they're directly chosen by the people have a right to discuss political opinions and views freely. I mean, at the end of the day, I think what there needs to be, and I think Augusta would agree, is there needs to be a restoration of fundamental freedom. That there is a statement or a bill that restores fundamental freedoms, such as freedom of speech and the like. Finding these implied rights here and there just doesn't cut it. And I'll give you a practical example why. Bob Brown in 2015, I think it was, had a case in the High Court where the implied right to political communication, freedom of political communication, was upheld in relation to protests. But 3 years later, it was struck down in relation to people praying outside abortion clinics. So irrespective of what your views are on abortion, it has to be a political matter because it's legislated.
Yes.
So that's why I think this notion of implied freedom of political communication, James Allen thinks it was made up. And I think as Australians and as a party, I think what we need to call for is the restoration of fundamental freedoms and our common law right to free speech. I mean, the constitutional commentators back in Sullivan, I think one of them, his name was, actually said in the 1960s, it's the freedom par excellence. Without it, you don't have any other freedoms. And even Margaret Thatcher said, free speech and freedom from interference with government is what helps along and creates a free society, and all other freedoms depend on that. I hope I've answered the question.
Well, there's another one here from David, and this is something that comes up quite a lot. And he asked, Rocco, do you support a Bill of Rights?
Look, I don't think you have a Bill of Rights, because look how far it's got them down there in Victoria. I mean, the thing about a Bill of Rights is it has to be drafted in such a way that it's very broad brush. And the problem with that is that then, because it's written down, it becomes justiciable. That means the courts then get to look at it, and then the courts either restrict it or allow it for things that you wouldn't have imagined it might be allowed. So I'm not necessarily a supporter of a Bill of Rights, but we need a change in the philosophy to have some kind of restoration of our common law freedoms. That was where I think the Religious Freedom Bill fell over, because they were looking at it from the point of view of discrimination. Who can we not offend? Yeah. Whereas it should be, well, we shouldn't be worrying about offending people. And I think a big solution, a really big way to resolve a lot of this would be to repeal Section 18C. I think you'd solve a lot of problems if you simply repealed Section 18C.
Yes. And there is a comment here from Benjamin saying, a Bill of Rights only works if the legal framework is stating that the bill is acknowledging natural rights and is not imparting rights and of itself. Would you agree with that, Rocco?
Yeah, well, that's why the American Bill of Rights seems to work, because it's based on that declaration based on that line in the Declaration of Independence, and that's what formed it. That we have inalienable rights such as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
There's a lot of love for the idea of death to 18C. And Rob asked a question, Rocco, I'm not sure if you've seen it, but what do you think of our free speech policy? And we will be playing a video on that tonight. So he says, what does Rocco think of part of our free speech policy, which we are releasing tonight, to have a referendum on adding basically a copy and paste of the US First Amendment?
As I said, that would be a restoration. That would be in line with what I was talking about, a restoration of freedoms bill. And I think that's probably definitely the way to go. Yeah.
Well, now you've got to go and do your homework. You'll have to go do your homework and read our free speech policy now.
Yeah. but that, I think that would be a really, really good start.
Hopefully you'll stay on board tonight, because as I said, the video we'll be playing the video during this show, and then it will be live to share from 8:30 onwards. So hopefully we get the tick of approval from you after that, Rocco.
Okay.
Actually, John says that Craig Kelly has stated that your book is a must-read for all UAP members. And so, John Ruddick,
wow.
Do you say that it's a must-read for all Lib Dem members as well?
Yes, I bought the book a week ago. I've read about the first third of it, and it's. I'm really glad you wrote it, Rocco, because for decades to come, it's going to be like the textbook on why right of centre Australians were unhappy with ScoMo. It really lays out the full case, and I think he's found guilty. I think of being a completely fake person. Politically.
Yes. Well, that's the only thing he's authentic on is being fake. Yes. I also want to say, look, based on something I was saying earlier, if I'm glad that all members want to buy the book, but maybe you might want to recommend it to your friends for that very reason, who are wavering, who are thinking, oh, look, we just need to keep Labor out. This is the reason why we need to, I mean, Paul Keating once said, if you change the government, you change the country. Well, we need to change the parties to change the country. And this book hopefully will provide you the reasoning why. And this is, I mean, it's funny how history repeats itself. I mean, in 1972, Sir Robert Menzies was so disgusted with the party he founded and led for 22 years that he voted DLP. In the 1972. And in 1974, he wrote that letter to his daughter, Heather, lamenting the state of the Victorian branch of the Liberals, because they were all these small L Liberals who were just out to get quick votes. And he said the whole thing was tragic. And look where we are 50 years later.
Exactly.
It's amazing how it's turned full circle.
Exactly right. Now, just to finish up, Rocco, where can we buy the book? How can people buy the book?
Okay, what I'll do is on the chat, I'll put up the links. To the book on Lock Press, and I want to shout out to Lock Press, who've really helped us turn this book around quickly. And there's also a Kindle version that just came out today, so if people don't want to wait for the hard copy, you can get an ebook version. And a shout out to John Larder as well, who's inspired a lot of people and inspired us, I think, to help to put this book together. And John, hopefully, I mean, we can get Ben Falconer over the line over here, the cop who's challenging the vaccine mandates, because I know you were an inspiration to him as well.
And Rocco as well, just for those that are listening and not watching live, can you say the name of the website where we can buy the book? Yeah,
it's called Deconstructing ScoMo altogether. So deconstructing, then ScoMo altogether.com.au.
Beautiful. And David says, will you be the AG in the first Lib Dems government?
Watch this space.
Beautiful. Now, for those that are here live in the chat box, the links are all up there for the website and for the Kindle version, but certainly get to the Deconstructing ScoMo website to buy it yourself. Thank you very, very much, Rocco, for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much for having us.
Beautiful. And I hope you do get to stay in the chat box, because a lot of people commenting about that in there as well. So
I'll stay until the kids get home and make it.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, Rocco.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night, Rocco. Thanks. Good to see you, mate.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Kirsty.
Thanks, Rocco. It's fantastic to have someone from Western Australia come on your show, Kirsty. And he's been fantastic behind the scenes, and I'm going to give him a call after this and ask him to run as a House of Representative candidate for us. So stay by the phone, Rocco. He'll be getting a call from me shortly.
Yay.
Bye.
A lot of love in the comments.